Commander Taiwan Park stood tall as the airlock door slid open. The hissing sound of air pressure equalizing filled his ears. His heart beat fast, but his face remained calm. Today, humans would officially meet the Galactic Council for the first time. "Ready, Ambassador Kim?" he asked, glancing at the woman beside him. Hannah Kim nodded. Her simple black uniform matched his own, with only the Earth emblem on their shoulders to show they came from the small blue planet that the galaxy had watched from afar for centuries. "As ready as I'll ever be to meet aliens who think we're a joke," she said with a small smile. They stepped forward together, leading the 5-person human team into the massive council chamber. The room stretched upward for at least 50 meters, with curved walls that shimmered with a pearl-like glow. Seats ringed the chamber in rising tiers, filled with beings of every shape and color. Some had too many limbs, others had no limbs at all. Some floated in special tanks, others stood on appendages that looked like tree roots. The variety was stunning, but Taiwan had been well briefed on the 2 main powers they needed to impress. The Iridians sat to the right, tall, thin beings with gray skin and large heads housing their famous analytical minds. They controlled most of the galaxy's knowledge and research. To the left were the Vesperi, insect-like warriors with chitinous armor and compound eyes, who provided most of the military might in this sector of space. "Humans of Earth," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Galactic Council acknowledges your presence and welcomes you to this gathering of civilized worlds." Taiwan noticed several of the alien delegates making small gestures to each other. Some vibrated their appendages in what the briefing materials had identified as laughter. Hannah stepped forward. "We thank the Council for this honor and bring greetings from Earth." An Iridian rose from its seat. Its voice came through the translation device with a slight buzz. "We have studied your world for many years. Your technological progress has been surprisingly quick. Though your biology remains quite fragile," added a Vesperi, its mandibles clicking. "We find it remarkable you survived to develop spaceflight at all." Taiwan kept his face neutral, but he felt his jaw tighten. The condescension was clear. Hannah smiled diplomatically. "Humans have always found ways to overcome our limitations." "Yes, we've observed this tendency in your mythology," the Iridian said. "Quite fascinating how your species creates elaborate fantasies about facing impossible threats. Dragons, gods, world-ending disasters, all defeated by ordinary humans through, what do you call it? Courage." A wave of that strange alien laughter rippled through the chamber. "Our myths reflect our history and values," Hannah replied calmly. "They teach us that we can face any challenge." "A charming cultural artifact," the Iridian said, "though scientifically implausible, given your physical constraints." Dr. Min-Ho Kang, their xenobiologist, whispered to Taiwan, "They really do think we're a joke." Taiwan nodded slightly. For now. The formal presentations continued for hours. The humans showed videos of Earth, explained their governance, and outlined their hopes for galactic cooperation. Throughout it all, Taiwan noticed the subtle signs, the way the aliens spoke slowly as if to children, the amused glances they exchanged when humans described their achievements. When the session ended, the Earth team was escorted to their quarters. Only when the door closed behind them did Hannah's diplomatic mask fall. "Well, that was humiliating," she said, dropping into a chair. Taiwan looked out the viewport at the massive space station that housed the council. Stars glittered beyond it. "They think we're weak because we had to fight to survive," he said quietly. "They don't understand that fighting made us strong." Hannah looked up at him. "They laughed at our myths today. Our stories of humans facing monsters and gods." "Yes," said Taiwan, turning back to her with a small smile. "Let's hope they never have to find out where those stories really came from." Dr. Jun Hobeck adjusted his collar for the 5th time. The waiting room outside the Great Hall of the Galactic Archives was quiet except for the soft hum of an air filter. Today was supposed to be a proud moment for humanity. He, a respected xenoanthropologist from Earth, had been invited to present human history and mythology to the finest academic minds in the galaxy. But the week since their arrival had taught him what invited really meant. The door slid open. An Iridian assistant glided in, its long gray fingers holding a data tablet. "Your presentation has been allocated 15 minutes, it said without looking up. The high scholars are very busy today." Junho frowned. The original schedule was for 1 hour. Plans change. 15 minutes is sufficient for human research. The Iridian made a small whistling sound through its nasal slits, their version of a dismissive laugh. Inside the hall, hundreds of aliens sat in rising tiers. Most were Iridians, their large heads and spindly bodies making them look like walking light bulbs in fancy robes. A few Vesperi military observers stood at attention near the walls. Other species Junho couldn't name filled the remaining seats. No one introduced him. He simply walked to the central platform and began. "Distinguished scholars," he said, his voice echoing. "Human mythology is not just entertainment. It is how we prepared ourselves for survival." He showed images of ancient cave paintings, heroes fighting beasts, people working together to hunt mammoth. "Our earliest stories taught us to face danger as a group, to plan, to sacrifice, and to persist," he explained. "When humans tell stories of fighting dragons, we are teaching the next generation how to face threats bigger than themselves." A low murmur spread through the audience, not of interest, but of amusement. The lead Iridian scholar, Master Silk, raised a long finger. "Dr. Bake, with respect, your species evolved on a relatively safe world. Your natural predators were small compared to those on Vesperi hunting grounds. Yet your myths feature impossible creatures and scenarios." "That's exactly my point," Junho said eagerly. "We imagined worst-case scenarios to prepare for them." Master Silk's large eyes blinked slowly. "Preparing for imaginary threats seems inefficient. But, and these tales of humans surviving disasters or defeating beings many times their strength," interrupted another scholar, waving a tentacle dismissively. "Biologically impossible. Your muscle density and bone structure cannot support such outcomes. These are clearly just primitive superstitions." Junho tried again. "The value is in the problem-solving approach. Take the myth of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to help humanity." Yes, Master Silk cut in. "A charming tale. But fire was not stolen from higher beings. It was a natural discovery all species make at a certain technological stage." The room filled with that whistling laugh again. Junho felt his face grow hot. "You're missing the point. These stories helped us." "Your time is complete, Doctor," the assistant announced. "The high scholars thank you for this cultural contribution." Junho stood frozen as the audience began to disperse, many making gestures of amusement to each other. Only one Iridian, younger than the rest, approached him. "I found your perspective interesting," she said quietly. "I'm Nilzi, junior researcher. Your myths remind me of our ancient warning tales before we became an advanced society." "They're more than warning tales," Junho said. "They're survival manuals." Nilzi tilted her large head. "Survival against what? Your world faces no significant threats." Junho picked up his materials. "Not anymore. But we remember what it was like when we did." He left the great hall with his head high, but his spirit low. In the corridor, he found Taiwan waiting. "That bad?" the commander asked, seeing his face. "Worse," Junho replied. "They think our whole history is a joke. They can't imagine a species that had to fight for every step of progress." Taiwan nodded grimly. "Let's hope they never have to learn why we needed all those survival stories." Neither man noticed Nilzi watching them from the doorway, her large eyes curious. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the galactic community. The Earth delegation had settled into their quarters on the massive council station. They had learned to eat strange foods, navigate the complex social rules, and ignore the constant undercurrent of condescension from the older species. Admiral Sun Ma-Choi was the newest arrival. As head of Earth's Space Force, she had come to observe Galactic Defense Force training exercises. So far, she was not impressed. They practice like it's a dance, she told Taiwan as they watched Vesperi troops perform precision maneuvers on a viewing screen. Everything is by the book. No room for adaptation. Taiwan nodded. The Vesperi haven't fought a real war in over 300 years. Just small police actions. The emergency alarms cut through their conversation. Red lights flashed along the corridors. Both officers ran toward the council chamber, joining Hana and Junho, who were already rushing in the same direction. Inside, the chamber was in chaos. Council members chittered, whistled, and roared in their native languages as the translation system struggled to keep up. At the center, a hologram showed 3 Vesperi colony worlds. One by one, the planets turned from green to red. "What's happening?" Hannah asked a nearby Iridian. "The Void Harvesters," the alien whispered, its large eyes wide with fear. "They've returned." On the main platform, the Vesperi High General's insect-like mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke. "The outer colonies are overrun. Defense platforms went dark within hours. We've lost contact with 7 million citizens." The hologram changed to show grainy footage of the attack. Strange black shapes moved across the screen. They looked like living shadows with too many limbs, consuming everything in their path. Buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself seemed to dissolve where they touched. "The Void Harvesters are a silicon-based hive mind," Junho whispered to his human colleagues. "They consume energy and technology. I read about them in the archives. They appear every few centuries, then vanish again." "Mobilize the 3rd and 4th fleets," ordered the council leader, a massive blue-skinned being. "All worlds must contribute to the defense." Sun Ma stepped forward before Taiwan could stop her. "Earth will help," she called out. "Our ships are small but fast. We can provide support or evacuation assistance." The council chamber went quiet. All eyes turned to the human officer. The Vesperi general's compound eyes swiveled toward her. "Your offer is noted, human admiral. But this is not a situation for untested species. The harvesters would tear through your primitive ships in seconds." Sun Mi's back stiffened, but she kept her face calm. "We have combat experience against each other," interrupted an Iridian minister, "not against galactic threats. Rest assured, the advanced species will handle this crisis." As they were ushered out of the chamber, Sun Mi's face was dark with anger. "They treat us like children," she said through clenched teeth. "Weak children," added Junho. "They still think our stories of facing monsters are just fairy tales." Back in the Earth delegation's private meeting room, they watched the news feeds. The situation was getting worse. The harvesters had already taken 5 worlds and were moving deeper into council space. The Galactic Defense Force seemed to be following standard protocols, but the enemy adapted quickly. "They're losing," Taiwan said quietly. A message alert flashed on his personal device. His face went pale as he read it. "What is it?" Hannah asked. "My sister," Taiwan said, his voice tight. "Jai-yun is on the research station in the Proxima sector. They've just issued an evacuation warning. The harvesters were detected nearby." He pulled up a map. The research station was directly in the path of the advancing harvesters. Worse, it was low on the evacuation priority list. "The council is following protocol," Sun Ma said, reading the alert details. "Military assets first, then central worlds, then outer research stations." Taiwan looked at his friends, his eyes hard. "Jai-yun and her team will be dead before help arrives." "Not if we help them first," Sun Ma said. "Protocol be damned." "That would violate council orders," Hana warned. "We'd risk our standing in the galactic community." "Some things are more important than following rules," Taiwan replied. "The aliens might not understand that, but we do." Captain Dong Hyuk Lee had never stolen a spaceship before, yet here he was, powering up the Earth diplomatic shuttle, while Ta-1, Sun-Me, and 3 volunteer crew members strapped themselves in. "Council Control is asking why we've activated engines," said Yuri, their communications officer. "Tell them routine maintenance," Sun-Me ordered, and shut down the tracking beacon. Tai-1 looked at the star map. The Proxima research station, where his sister worked, was 18 hours away at top speed. The void harvesters would arrive in 20. "We have a small window," he said, "if we're lucky." Dong Hyuk's hands flew over the controls. "Who needs luck when you have skill?" His face was calm, but excitement danced in his eyes. After months of being treated like a second-class species, they were finally taking action. The shuttle shot away from the council station. Alarms blared almost immediately. "Unauthorized departure," announced a stern voice over the comm. "Human vessel, return at once or face consequences." Dong Hyuk ignored the warning and pushed the engines harder. The shuttle wasn't built for combat, but it was fast and agile. They were already out of tractor beam range. "We're being followed," reported Minji from the sensor station. 2 Vesperi patrol ships. "Can they catch us?" Ta-1 asked. Dong Hyuk smiled. "Not where we're going." He pointed the shuttle toward a dense asteroid field that stretched between them and their destination. The Vesperi ships were closing fast. "You can't be serious," Sun-Me said, looking at the swirling rocks ahead. "That's suicide." "For them, maybe," Dong Hyuk replied. "Not for us." The shuttle plunged into the asteroid field. Massive rocks tumbled all around them, some the size of small moons. Dong Hyuk's hands danced across the controls, making micro-adjustments with each potential collision. The pursuing ships slowed at the edge of the field. "Human vessel," came the Vesperi captain's voice. "That route is impassable. Return now." "Checking my notes," Dong Hyuk replied, swerving around a spinning asteroid. "Nope, seems passable to me." The shuttle twisted and dove between rocks that missed them by meters. The Vesperi ships tried to follow but quickly fell behind, eventually giving up. "How did you learn to fly like this?" Ta-1 asked as they emerged from the other side of the field. "Video games," Dong Hyuk said with a grin. "That, and I grew up racing skimmers through mountain canyons back home." 16 hours later, they approached the research station. It hung in space like a metal snowflake, its sections spreading out from a central hub. Warning lights flashed across its surface. "Life signs?" Ta-1 asked anxiously. 87 people, Minji confirmed, "but the station's in bad shape. Their main power is failing." They docked at an emergency airlock. Inside, they found chaos. Researchers and staff from a dozen species crowded the corridors. Many looked injured or sick. "The main evacuation ships never came," explained a frantic Iridian scientist. "We've been waiting for 10 hours. Tai-1 pushed through the crowd, searching for his sister. He found Jai-Yun in the medical bay, helping an injured Vesperi technician. "I knew you'd come," she said when she saw him, her tired face breaking into a smile. "We need to move fast," Sun-Me announced to the station staff. "Our shuttle can only take 30 people. Who has critical research that must be saved?" "Take the others first," Jai-Yun insisted. "I need to finish downloading our research data. It could help fight the harvesters." Warning alarms blared. The station shook violently. "Radiation surge," shouted Minji from her comlink. "The station's shields are failing." "Everyone to the shuttle," Tai-1 ordered. "Jai-Yun, leave the data." "I need 5 more minutes," his sister insisted. "This research could save lives." Sun-Me checked her radiation monitor. "The levels are already past what's safe for Iridians and Vesperi. But not for humans," Dong Hyuk said. "We can handle more." The alien scientists stared at them in confusion. "Impossible," said the Iridian. "Your bodies are more fragile than ours." "Watch us," said Sun-Me. She turned to the humans. We get everyone to the shuttle, then finish the download. 5 minutes in this radiation won't kill us. As the aliens were evacuated, the humans worked through the rising radiation. When the download finally completed, they staggered back to the shuttle, exhausted but successful. As they pulled away from the dying station, the aliens looked at their human rescuers with new eyes. For the first time, there was no condescension in their gaze, only wonder. The council chamber was silent as the humans stood before the gathered alien representatives. 3 days had passed since the rescue mission. The stolen shuttle had returned with all 87 scientists from the research station. "You violated direct orders," said the council leader, its blue skin darkening with anger. "You endangered a diplomatic vessel and interfered with emergency protocols." Hannah Kim stepped forward. As Earth's ambassador, it fell to her to defend their actions. "We saved lives that your protocols would have sacrificed," she said firmly. "And we recovered critical research data about the harvesters." The Iridian chief scientist raised a thin hand. "The data does appear valuable," it admitted reluctantly. Dr. Jae-yun Park's team had been studying harvester communication patterns. This information might help our defense efforts. A Vesperi commander clicked his mandibles in disagreement. "That does not excuse their reckless behavior. The human pilot flew through an asteroid field rated as impassable. They exposed themselves to radiation levels that should have killed them. And yet, here we stand," said Sun Mei calmly. Whispers spread through the chamber. The aliens were confused. Their understanding of human biology didn't match what they had witnessed. Hannah seized the opportunity. "The Council has misunderstood humans from the beginning. You judged us by your standards, by your physical limitations. We're different." "Different how?" asked the Iridian scientist who had been quietly observing the proceedings. It was Junho who answered. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us at every turn. Predators, disasters, disease, even other humans. Those who survived passed on their traits. We are the descendants of the ones who lived through impossible odds." "Just like in your myths," said Nilsi, the young Iridian researcher from the archives. She had come forward to stand beside the council members. "Exactly," Junho nodded. "Our stories weren't fantasies. They were memories, lessons, survival guides." The council leader seemed unconvinced. "This is all very interesting, but it doesn't change the fact that humans are not authorized to participate in military operations against the harvesters." "The Proxima sector has fallen," reported a Vesperi messenger who rushed into the chamber. "The supply route to the front lines is now exposed." The news sent a wave of fear through the room. Without that supply route, the frontline forces would be cut off. More worlds would fall. Hannah looked at Sunmai, who nodded slightly. "We propose a compromise," Hannah said. "Allow a small human contingent to help defend the supply route. If we fail, you've lost nothing. If we succeed, perhaps you'll reconsider our role." The council debated briefly, their options limited by the spreading crisis. "Very well," the leader said finally. "Captain Lee may take one small ship to assist the defense of Junction Station, but you will follow Vesperi command." 2 days later, a modified Earth shuttle approached Junction Station. Inside, Dong-Huk sat at the controls with a crew of 7 humans, including Sunmai and Taiwan. "Junction Station reports harvesters approaching," said the communications officer. "Vesperi ships are engaging." On the view screen, they watched black, spider-like forms swarming toward the station. The Vesperi ships fired disciplined, coordinated volleys, exactly as their tactical manuals prescribed. But the harvesters adapted quickly, changing their formation to minimize damage. "They're learning," Sunmai observed. "The Vesperi keep using the same pattern, and the harvesters are countering it." "So we don't use patterns," Dong-Huk said with a grin. He opened a channel to the Vesperi commander. "Request permission to engage using human tactics." "Define human tactics," came the suspicious reply. "Basically, we're going to be unpredictable," Dong-Huk answered. "Like this." He cut the communication and pushed the shuttle into a wild spin, firing thrusters in seemingly random bursts. The small ship danced through the harvester swarm, weapons blazing in irregular patterns. The harvesters couldn't predict their movements. For every hit the humans took, they destroyed 3 enemies. The Vesperi ships paused their attack, watching in amazement. "What are they doing?" asked a Vesperi gunner. His commander's compound eyes tracked the human shuttle's erratic path. "They're fighting, like myths come to life." Word of the human victory at Junction Station spread quickly. The small Earth shuttle had destroyed more harvesters than 3 Vesperi cruisers combined. The Council could no longer ignore the humans' potential value. In the Emergency Command Center, representatives from all species gathered around a large holographic display. Red zones marking harvester control had spread across 1/5 of Council space. "Their advance has slowed, but not stopped," reported the Vesperi High General. "We destroy them in one sector, and they multiply faster in another." Junho stood at the back of the room, analyzing data from Jai Yun's research team. Something about the harvester's behavior patterns seemed familiar to him. When it finally clicked, he gasped out loud. "Dr. Bake has something to say," Hannah announced, noticing his reaction. All eyes turned to him. 3 weeks ago, they would have dismissed him instantly. Now, they waited in silence. "The harvesters," Junho said, stepping forward. "They're like the Hydra from Earth mythology." "The what?" asked an Iridian minister. "A monster with many heads," Junho explained. "When you cut off one head, 2 more would grow in its place." He pointed to the data. "Look at the attack patterns. When we destroy harvesters in one location, they'd reproduce twice as fast in the areas where they're not being attacked. They're drawing energy and resources away from the attack zones to strengthen elsewhere." The aliens studied the data. "This seems accurate," admitted the Iridian chief scientist. "But how does this help us?" "In our myth," Junho continued, "the hero Hercules didn't defeat the Hydra by cutting off heads. He burned each stump after cutting, preventing new heads from growing." Sunlight leaned forward. "We need to hit them everywhere at once. No safe zones where they can recover and multiply." "Impossible," said the Vesperi general. "We don't have enough ships to attack on all fronts simultaneously." "Then we need a different strategy," Taiwan suggested. "Something from another human myth. The Trojan horse." The council members looked confused. "Instead of spreading our forces thin," he explained, "we create a deliberate weak point, a target too tempting to resist. When they swarm there, we hit them with everything we have." "A trap," said the Vesperi general, his compound eyes gleaming with new respect. "But the bait must be real," Sun Mai added, "valuable enough that they commit fully." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "You're suggesting a sacrificial strategy," said the council leader slowly, "deliberately placing valuable assets at risk." "Yes," Sun Mai confirmed. "In human warfare, sometimes you must risk everything to win everything." The aliens looked uncomfortable. Their warfare had become clinical over the centuries, focused on minimizing losses through careful calculations. "The main harvester force is heading toward Venturus Colony," said the Vesperi general. "Over 3 million citizens, plus a major energy production facility." "Perfect target," Sun Mai said. "We make it look weakly defended, draw them in, then hit them from all sides." "And who will be the bait?" asked an Iridian minister. "Who stays on the ground to maintain the illusion until the trap is sprung?" "We will," said Taiwan without hesitation. "Humans excel at last stands." The council leader's large eyes blinked slowly. "You would risk your lives based on stories." "Not just stories," Junho corrected. "Strategies that have worked for us throughout our history. When the ancient Greeks couldn't breach Troy's walls, they built a wooden horse. When the Spartans faced the Persian army, 300 soldiers held the pass at Thermopylae." Dong Hyuk grinned. "We've been preparing for this our entire existence. You thought our myths were fantasies about monsters and heroes. They were actually battle plans. For the first time since the humans had arrived at the council, there was no condescension in the aliens' gaze, only dawning understanding. "Very well," said the council leader. "We will try this. Mythological warfare. Admiral Choi will coordinate with our forces." Sun Li nodded, her face solemn. "We'll need to move quickly. And one more thing. We'll need volunteers who can think like humans." Nilzi, the young Iridian researcher, stepped forward. "I've been studying human myths since Dr. Beck's presentation. I volunteer." One by one, other aliens joined her. The battle for survival had begun, with humanity leading the way. The trap at Venturous Colony worked better than anyone expected. The harvesters swarmed toward the seemingly vulnerable target, only to be caught in the combined firepower of the entire galactic fleet. Human shuttles darted between larger alien vessels, their unpredictable movements confusing the enemy. When the battle ended, the harvester force had been reduced by nearly 40%. For the first time since the crisis began, the council species felt hope. 1 week later, Captain Dong-Huk Lee stood before a mixed group of alien soldiers in a training hall on the council station. Vespari, Iridians, and representatives from a dozen other species watched him with curious eyes. "Forget everything you know about formation fighting," Dong-Huk told them. "The harvesters adapt to patterns. We need to be unpredictable." A Vespari officer raised his armored limb. "Our warriors have trained for generations in precision combat. You ask us to abandon this." "Not abandon," Dong-Huk corrected. "Expand. Add human chaos to your alien order." He demonstrated a series of combat maneuvers that seemed random, but actually followed a deeper instinctive logic. The aliens tried to copy him, their movements stiff and uncertain. "They're struggling," Ta-Wan said quietly to Sunmei as they watched from the side. "They'll learn," she replied. "They have to." In another section of the station, Junho and Jai-Yun worked with Nilzi and a team of alien scientists. They studied the data from each encounter with the harvesters, looking for patterns and weaknesses. "The harvesters show signs of collective intelligence," Jai-Yun explained. "They learn and adapt as a group. Like bees or ants on Earth," Junho added, "but much more complex." Nilzi tilted her large head. "In your myths, how did humans defeat hive minds?" Junho smiled. "We cut off the head, disrupted their communication, or turned them against each other." "The Spartans at the hot gates," Jai-Yun said. "They used the narrow pass to negate the Persians' advantage of numbers." "And the story of David and Goliath," Junho added. "Sometimes a smaller force can win by targeting a critical weakness." As the days passed, more alien species began seeking human guidance. The Vespari, initially the most resistant, became the most eager students. Their natural warrior instincts blended well with human tactics once they overcame their rigid training. In the council chamber, Hana presented updates on the war effort. The combined fleets have now reclaimed 12 systems. The mixed human-alien combat teams are proving especially effective. The council leader nodded with new respect. "It seems we have much to learn from Earth's, what did you call them? Battle myths." "Not just battle myths," Hana corrected. "Stories of endurance, adaptation, and cooperation. Humans have always known we're stronger together than apart." After the meeting, Ta-Wan found Nilzi waiting outside. The young Iridian researcher had been working closely with the humans for weeks now. "I've been studying more of your myths," she said excitedly. "There's one about a creature called a phoenix that rises from its own ashes. Is that real?" Ta-Wan smiled. "Not literally, but it represents the human spirit. No matter how many times we fall, we get back up. That's what makes you different," Nilzi realized. "My people avoid pain and difficulty. Your people embrace challenges." "We had no choice," Ta-Wan explained. "Earth wasn't as gentle as Iridia. We had to become strong or die." A Vespari commander approached them, his mandibles clicking in what Ta-1 now recognized as respect rather than amusement. "The next battle group is ready for deployment," he reported. "They've been trained in human-style fighting." "Are they ready?" Ta-1 asked. "They are eager," the Vesperi replied. "Our warriors now tell stories of the humans who dance through asteroid fields and walk through radiation. They wish to make their own legends." As Ta-1 walked to the command center, he passed aliens from many species practicing human combat moves. Some studied Earth history texts. Others shared meals with human officers, listening intently to stories of battles long past. The same beings who had laughed at human myths now treated those stories as precious wisdom. "They're becoming more like us," Sunmai observed as she joined Ta-1. "And we're learning from them too," he replied. "Their technology, their knowledge." "Do you think we can actually win this war?" she asked quietly. Ta-1 watched as a group of Vesperi warriors practiced an ancient Earth sword technique, adapted for their alien limbs. "We always have," he said simply. "That's the whole point of our stories." 2 months into the war, the combined forces had pushed the Harvesters back to the edge of Council space, but the enemy was not defeated. They had retreated to a neutron star system, where radiation levels and gravitational forces were extreme. "Our sensors have located the Harvester hive mind," reported a Vesperi commander during the emergency council meeting. "It's hiding in the accretion disk of the neutron star." The holographic display showed a dense, swirling mass of hot gas and dust circling the tiny but incredibly powerful star. Red dots indicated the Harvester concentrations. "Can we attack from a distance?" asked the council leader. The Iridian chief scientist shook his head. "The radiation would disable our weapon systems before they could reach the target, and the gravitational distortion makes remote targeting impossible." "We would need to get close," the Vesperi commander added. "Too close for any of our species to survive." The room fell silent. Then Ta-1 stepped forward. "Humans could do it," he said quietly. All eyes turned to him. "That's impossible," said the Iridian scientist. "The radiation levels are far beyond what any biological organism could withstand." "We've already proven we can tolerate radiation better than you expected," Sunmei pointed out. "And with proper shielding, we could survive long enough to deliver the attack." "It would still be a suicide mission," the council leader said. "Not necessarily." Jia-Yun joined the conversation. "I've been working on an experimental radiation shield. It might give a small ship enough time to get in, launch the attack, and get out." "But the gravitational forces," the Iridian began. "We'll need the best pilot," Ta-1 interrupted. "And the ship would need to be small and highly maneuverable." Dong-Huk smiled from across the room. "Like flying through an asteroid field, but harder." "I'm in." The council members looked at each other in disbelief. "This is madness," said the Iridian minister. "No," Junho corrected. "This is human mythology in action. The hero's journey into the underworld." "Orpheus," Nilsi said, surprising everyone. "He descended into Hades to rescue his beloved." Junho nodded, impressed by her knowledge. "Exactly, and like Orpheus, we intend to return." 3 days later, 3 small ships prepared for launch from the council flagship. Each had been specially modified with Jia-Yun's experimental shields and reinforced hulls. The crews were all volunteers, 15 humans total. Ta-1 commanded the lead ship, with Dong-Huk as pilot and Sunmai as weapons officer. The other vessels were commanded by trusted human officers. The launch bay was crowded with aliens from all council species, come to witness the departure. Many pressed small tokens into the humans' hands, good luck charms from a dozen worlds. "They believe in us now," Sunmai said softly. "They're learning to believe in themselves too," Ta-1 replied. "That's more important." Hannah approached them, her face solemn. "The council asks that you reconsider. They say no victory is worth this risk." "Tell them this is what humans do," Ta-1 said. "We face the impossible odds so others don't have to." The journey to the neutron star took 6 hours. As they approached, the ship's systems began to strain under the radiation. "Shields at 60%, reported Sunmay. "We're still outside the worst zone." Through the viewports, they could see the accretion disk, a swirling vortex of superheated gas glowing in eerie colors. Somewhere in that maelstrom was the harvester hive mind. "I'm picking up the target," Sunmay announced. "It's deep in the disk, near the inner edge." "That's suicide," muttered the communications officer. "No," Dongkuk corrected with a grim smile. "That's Tuesday on Earth." He pushed the ship forward, diving into the swirling chaos. Warning alarms blared as radiation levels spiked. The other human ships followed, spread out to attack from different angles. "Shields at 40%, Sunmay called out. 35. 30. The ship bucked and shuddered as gravitational forces pulled at it. Dongkuk's hands flew over the controls, making constant adjustments. "This is like nothing I've ever flown before," he said through gritted teeth. Ahead, they could see strange black shapes moving through the glowing gas, harvesters protecting their central hive. "Target locked," Sunmay announced. "But we need to get closer." Taiwan opened the ship-wide channel. "This is Commander Park to all ships. Remember the stories we used to tell. Remember why we're here. For Earth, for the Council, for all life in this galaxy." "Shields at 20%, Sunmay warned. Dongkuk pushed the ship forward. "Just a little closer. Fire," Taiwan commanded as their ship reached optimal range. Sunmay launched the specialized warheads. They streaked through the swirling gas toward the dark mass at the center. The other human ships fired seconds later, their weapons converging on the same target. "Shields at 15%, reported the systems officer. "Hull temperature critical." "Turn us around," Taiwan ordered. "Full power to engines." Dongkuk spun the ship, fighting against the immense gravitational pull of the neutron star. Behind them, the warheads found their mark. The explosion was unlike anything they had ever seen, a rippling burst of energy that seemed to fold space itself. "The harvester hive is breaking apart," Sunmay shouted above the blaring alarms. The ship shuddered violently. A support beam crashed down, narrowly missing Taiwan. "Shields failing," came the warning. "Radiation levels rising in all sections." "Can we outrun it?" Taiwan asked. Dongkuk's face was a mask of concentration. "We can try." The 3 human ships raced away from the neutron star, the expanding wave of energy from the explosion gaining on them. One ship, damaged by harvester attacks, couldn't maintain speed. It was caught in the wave and disappeared. "We've lost Echo Team," Sunmay reported grimly. Their own ship's systems were failing one by one. Half the crew was already unconscious from radiation exposure. Dongkuk's hands were burned from electrical discharges, but he kept flying. "Just a little further," he muttered. "Just a little more." They burst free of the accretion disk, but the wave was still coming. Then suddenly, a massive Vesperi cruiser appeared before them, positioning itself between the human ships and the energy wave. "Human vessels, dock immediately," came the Vesperi commander's voice. "We will shield you." They barely made it to the docking bay before the wave hit. The cruiser rocked violently but held together. When the chaos finally subsided, Taiwan looked around at his surviving crew. They were injured, exhausted, but alive. And victorious. 3 weeks later, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity. Representatives from every council species had gathered for the ceremony. The human team, now recovered from their injuries, stood before the council leader. Taiwan, Sunmay, Dongkuk, Jia-Yun, Junho, and Hannah formed a line, with other human crew members behind them. They wore their Earth uniforms, now adorned with new council medallions. For uncounted millennia, the council has stood as the guardian of civilization in this galaxy, the leader began. Today, we add a new chapter to our history, the chapter of Earth. One by one, they were called forward to receive the highest honors, the council could bestow. When it was To-1's turn, he stepped forward with steady grace. "Commander Park," said the leader, "your people have taught us the value of what we once dismissed as primitive superstition. Human mythology, we now understand, is not fantasy but wisdom distilled through generations of survival." The leader placed a glowing crystal emblem on To-1's uniform. "We honor you not just for your victory, but for showing us a better way to face the darkness." After the ceremony, the council unveiled a new monument in the central plaza. It combined elements from a dozen alien artistic traditions with symbols from human mythology. A phoenix rising, a warrior facing a dragon, heroes standing against impossible odds. Jae-yun now led a cross-species research initiative studying human resilience. Scientists who had once mocked human biology now eagerly sought to understand it. In the archives, Joon-ho and Nilzi worked together cataloging human achievements. The young Iridian had become the foremost alien expert on Earth culture. "I'm recording everything," she told Joon-ho excitedly. "Future generations need to know what happened here." Ambassador Hannah Kim stood before the council one last time before returning to Earth for consultations. The final treaty making humans full council members lay before her. "We come to the stars not as conquerors, but as teachers and students both," she said as she signed the document. "We bring our stories, our courage, and our humanity." That night, on a Vespere colony world, a father tucked his young larvae into their sleep chambers. "Tell us a story," they clicked eagerly. "Very well," he said. "I will tell you of the brave humans who descended into the heart of a neutron star to fight the void harvesters." "Is it true?" asked one larva. "Every word," the father replied. "I saw it with my own eyes." Across the galaxy, a new mythology was taking shape. At its center were the humans who had proven that sometimes the most unbelievable stories were the most important ones to believe.